might not realise it just by looking at this, but back in the day, this was quite an expensive background to buy. This one, on the other hand, not so much. But having two backgrounds is a great way to add some depth to your images, because what I'm actually going to do is overlap these two similar backgrounds to create some shadows. And shadows give a sense of depth in the images, and I'll show you 3 ways to do that. This background is actually just hand-painted canvas. I wanted something that matched nearly an existing background that I already owned, but I didn't want to spend a fortune doing it. And I think it's actually come out okay. But there's only one way to find out, and that's to actually use it. So let's overlap these backgrounds. Let's get a light in, let's get a model in, let's get shooting. So to help me out today, I've got the amazing Chloe. Chloe's going to be the model for this photo session, and I'm going to start with a really easy way to overlap a couple of backgrounds, and that is to make a corner. Now, normally when you make a corner, particularly with a pop-up background, the curve of the pop-up limits the amount of corner you can make. But with this setup, because they're overlapping, I've overlapped it enough that I have more height. So Chloe can stand up and I can still use this as a corner. Now I've metered this out, so let's take a test photo, see how this looks. And it looks okay. There's definitely that corner feel. The edge is nicely overlapping. There's a nice little shadow going on there, but it doesn't really feel like a corner in the photos, even though it is. So there's a better way of doing this, and all I have to do is change one thing. So the thing I've changed is one of the backgrounds. I've moved it so it's no longer a 90-degree angle. Now it's more like an acute angle, a 45-degree angle. That sounds like it shouldn't really work, but from the photography point of view, this is going to give me more of a corner feel. Well, that's the idea. Let's take a test photo and see how it looks. Okay, Chloe, here we go. Obviously, I have to be in a different position as well to make this work. But the end result is definitely a slightly more corner feel. The overlap at the back, the join, looks really nice. It gets a little bit darker back there, exactly as it would do on an actual real corner. Now I can affect the results from this simply by moving my light around. I'm using a strip box for this because it allows me to have either a wide light or a narrower light without having to take the softbox down and change it for another one. So I don't have to change anything. All I have to do is take the same shot, and this is going to give me a different look and feel. Which is the right one is entirely up to you. And I think the best way to discover that is to take a few photos. So Chloe, if you're ready, let's take a few photos like this. Here we go. It's worth noting that I haven't got the light too high, because otherwise Chloe would have to tilt her head up to get any light into her eyes. So it is positioned just above her eyeline. For the second setup, I've changed things around. Now the backgrounds are definitely overlapping. Now, in an ideal world, I'd actually reverse my backgrounds. I'd have the lighter background behind the darker background, because I want to cast a shadow on that background, and if it's already dark, you kind of can't see the shadow. So my solution is to put a second light in. The second light is a large strip box, a 12 by 56 inch strip box. Its one and only job is to put a bit of light on the background, and if I use that light on its own, it looks like this. Now my camera settings for this haven't changed. I'm still at 1/250th of a second, my flash sync speed, f5.6 for a reasonable depth of field, ISO 200. And without any flash firing, I get no picture whatsoever. So I know I've got control of the room lights, but where should I put the light? The key light I've currently put on camera left, and I'll tell you now, this isn't the right place to put it, but let me show you why. Okay, Chloe, here we go, quick little test photo. Effectively, what that gives me is overlapping backgrounds, but we can't really see the overlap. There's no depth to this whatsoever. I need a shadow falling on the rear background. So I'm going to move the light so it's more or less in front of Chloe. This should give me a little bit of a shadow on that background. That's the idea. Let's see if it actually works. Okay, Chloe, here we go. And it kind of does. Now that's partly because I had to move. There's a light stand right in the middle. And if I actually move the other side of the light stand and take the same picture, then my shadow completely disappears. So although this works, it limits my position as a photographer, which might be okay, but it's not ideal. So I'm going to move this even further off to the side, like that, and take another picture. Let's see how this goes. And now I have a much stronger shadow, and I can move around a lot more and retain that shadow in the pictures. And that's really this setup done. So Chloe, if you're ready, let's take a few photos like this. Here we go. There's a gap of about 20 inches or 50 centimeters between the two backgrounds. And it's worth remembering, if you have a different sized gap, you will get very different amount of shadows. So for the last look, I've changed things ever so slightly. I've raised the background that's at the front, so now I have an overlap on two sides. There is the side we had before, but also one at the bottom. That means I need this light to create two shadows. Now it will, and it might be absolutely fine in the vertical position, but I'm going to put it horizontal so it gives a slightly broader spread of light. That's the idea. The exposure is going to be basically the same, so I don't need to change anything there. Let's take a test photo and see whether we get that double shadow. Okay, Chloe, here we go. I'm also going to go for a full-length portrait on this one. I think it fits this styling a little bit better, and yes, it works. With the props, I'm going to add them a bit at a time. So let's just start with a nice simple wooden step ladder, something like that. It gives something for Chloe to work with. She can stand up against it. It adds to a slightly fine art feel in my mind, and that also comes across because the fabric that we're using as the background at the front is a little bit frayed. It's not really well painted. There will be a bit of post-processing to do on these photos, but for now, I think we should take a few photos like this. So Chloe, are you ready? Okay, here we go. Having gone to the trouble of doubling up the backgrounds, it would be a bit of a shame if Chloe stood right over the overlap. So I'm just moving her off to the side to make sure that that shadow we've created is nice and visible. Doubling up on the backgrounds did more than just add a bit of shadow for depth. It actually created some visual interest. And because I've chosen two backgrounds with a fairly similar color and it matched in with Chloe's look, I think it did really well. Now, all of the gear I'm using in this video you'll find linked in the video description down below, with the exception of the two backgrounds, because one's really old and one, well, I made. But other than that, if you've enjoyed this video, whilst you're down there, click on the bell icon so you never miss a video right here. Leave me a comment, even if it's just a thumbs up. It all helps with the algorithm. And of course, click on that subscribe button if you haven't already done so. I'm Gavin Hoey. Thanks for watching.